Are you tired of struggling to visualize your dream home? Well, say goodbye to the guesswork and say hello to Homestyler. Homestyler is the revolutionary app that puts professional-grade interior design tools right at your fingertips. Whether you're redecorating your living room or planning a full home renovation, Homestyler has got you covered. With Homestyler, you can create stunning 3D renderings of your space, experiment with thousands of colors and textures, place virtual furniture and decor from top brands, and even take a virtual tour of your design. It's like having an interior designer, but in your pocket 24/7. Perfect for homeowners, renters, and professional designers. But the fun does not stop there. For a limited time, they are offering an exclusive deal to our listeners. Use promo code DARK10, all lowercase, at checkout to get an extra 10% off your Homestyler subscription. This is 10% off their already competitive prices. Don't let your dream home remain just a dream. Visit homestyler.com today and use promo code DARK10 and start designing the space that you have always dreamed of and wanted. Homestyler, where your vision becomes reality. Welcome to Dark Crossroads Podcast, hosted by Roxanne Fletcher. This is your stop for all things true crime and paranormal. From the infamous story of the New Bedford Highway Killer to the chilling tale of the Black-Eyed Children, Dark Crossroads Podcast is a truly deep dive into the stories that frighten and fascinate you. All links to the show will be provided in this episode's description. And don't forget to let us know what you think of today's episode. Hello to my fellow crime-obsessed weirdos. This podcast is a mixture of paranormal, true crime, scary, spooky, and sometimes the unexplained. But today we are meticulously dissecting one of the most baffling and controversial criminal cases in recent history. Today we are going to be diving deep into a case that has captivated the public imagination for over 2 decades now. The death of Kathleen Peterson and the subsequent trial of her husband, Michael Peterson. On a chilly December night in 2001, in the affluent Forest Hills neighborhood of Durham, North Carolina, a frantic 911 call shattered the quiet. Michael Peterson, a locally known novelist and aspiring politician, reported finding his wife Kathleen unconscious and bleeding at the bottom of a staircase in their sprawling mansion. What followed was a labyrinth series of events that would span over a time of years, involving accusations of murder, revelations of hidden sexualities, international connections to another suspicious staircase death, and even a theory involving an owl attacking somebody. This case would eventually become the subject of the critically acclaimed documentary series titled The Staircase, bringing it into the spotlight of true crime enthusiasts worldwide. But to truly understand this case, we need to go back to the very beginning. Who were Michael and Kathleen Peterson? Michael Ivor Peterson was born on October 23rd of 1943 in Nashville, Tennessee. He grew up in a very military family, moving frequently before settling in Durham, North Carolina. Michael attended Duke University, where he had graduated in 1965 with a political science degree. After college, like many young men in his generation, Peterson enlisted in the Marine Corps and served in the Vietnam War. His time in Vietnam would later become a point of controversy. Michael had claimed to have received a Purple Heart and a Silver Star for his service, but investigations during his murder trial revealed that these items were false. This revelation would cast doubt on Michael's character and his credibility. After his military service, Michael pursued a career as a novelist. He penned several books, including The Immortal Dragon, a A Time of War and A Bitter Peace. These novels, largely based on his experience in Vietnam, achieved moderate success. In addition to his writing career, Michael also worked as a newspaper columnist for the Durham Herald-Sun and dabbled in local politics, running unsuccessfully for mayor of Durham in 1999. Kathleen Hunt Atwater Peterson was born on February 21st of 1953. She had a very different background from Michael. She was a successful businesswoman, known for her intelligence and dedication to her family and her career. Kathleen graduated from Duke University in 1973 with a degree in engineering and later earned an MBA from Duke's School of Business. By 2001, Kathleen had risen to an executive position at Nordal Networks, a telecommunications company. She was highly regarded in her field and was known to be a perfectionist in both her professional and personal life. Friends and family described her as energetic, meticulous, and deeply committed to her loved ones. Michael and Kathleen's paths crossed in 1986, and they eventually got married in 1997. It was a second marriage for both of them, and they created a blended family with their children from previous relationships. Michael had 2 sons, Clayton and Todd, from his first marriage, and had adopted 2 girls, Margaret and Martha Ratliff, after their mother, Elizabeth Ratliff, a family friend, died in Germany in 1985. Kathleen had 1 daughter, Caitlin, from her first marriage. The Peterson family seemed to embody the American dream. They lived in a beautiful 9,000 square foot home in Durham's prestigious Forest Hills neighborhood. By all accounts, Michael and Kathleen appeared to have a loving relationship. They were well respected in their community and known for hosting dinner parties and actively participating in local cultural events. But as many would soon discover, beneath this veneer of suburban perfection lay a web of secrets and complexities that would come to light in the most tragic of circumstances. Now it is time to turn our attention to the night that changed everything, December 9th of 2001. It was a Sunday night, typically being a quiet time in the Peterson household. According to Michael Peterson's account, he and Kathleen had spent a very pleasant evening together. They had some wine by the pool, watched a movie, and Kathleen had gone to bed around 11 p.m., while Michael decided to stay up to read emails and do a little bit of extra work on his computer. At 2:40 a.m., on December 10th, the Durham 911 dispatch received a call from a distressed Michael Peterson. This is an excerpt from that call.
911, where's your emergency? Peter Street, please. What's wrong? My wife's had an accident. She's still breathing. What kind of accident? Still on the stairs. She's still breathing. Please come. Is she conscious? What? Is she conscious? No, she's not conscious. Okay. Please. How many stairs did you fall down? Huh? How many stairs? Stairs. How many stairs? Calm down, sir. Calm down. No, 15, 20, I don't know. Please, get somebody here right away. Please. Okay, somebody's dispatching the ambulance while I ask you questions. It's a Forest Hills, okay? Please. Sir, somebody else is dispatching the ambulance. Okay, is she awake now? Hello?
The call lasted for about 6 minutes, during which Peterson alternated between speaking to the operator and apparently trying to perform CPR on Kathleen. When first responders arrived at the scene, they found a chaotic and bloody scene. Kathleen Peterson's body was laying at the bottom of a narrow back staircase. The amount of blood at the scene was immediately striking to the responding officers and the paramedics. Blood spatter extended high up the walls of the staircase and pooled around Kathleen's body. She was wearing a sweatshirt and sweatpants, both heavily saturated with blood. Michael Peterson was also covered in blood and appeared to be distraught. He told the police that he had been sitting by the pool and came in to find Kathleen at the bottom of the staircase. He surmised that she must have fallen after consuming wine and Valium earlier in the evening. Paramedics quickly determined that Kathleen was beyond any help. She was pronounced dead at the scene. The initial impression of many first responders was that this was a tragic accident. However, as crime scene investigators began their work, several elements of the scene raised red flags. First and foremost was the sheer amount of blood. It seemed excessive for a simple fall down the stairs. The The blood spatter patterns on the wall were particularly concerning, extending much higher than one would expect from a fall. Secondly, Kathleen's injuries were very severe and somewhat unusual for a fall victim. She had deep lacerations to the back of her head, and the medical examiner would later note 7 distinct lacerations, some of which had the appearance of being inflicted by a weapon rather than an impact with stairs or the floor. As dawn broke on December 10th of 2001, what had started as a presumed tragic accident was quickly evolving into a potential homicide investigation. Michael Peterson suddenly found himself at the center of a storm that would consume the next 2 decades of his life. In the days following Kathleen's death, the investigation intensified. The Durham Police Department assigned some of their most experienced detectives to the case. Art Holland, a veteran investigator, took the lead. One of the first steps in any potential homicide investigation is to take a closer look at those closest to the victim. In this case, that meant Michael Peterson. As detectives dug into the Petersons' life, they began to uncover information that cast a lot of doubt on the image of a perfect marriage. Financial records showed that despite their outward appearance of wealth, the Petersons were struggling with debt. Kathleen's life insurance policy, being worth $1.4 million, suddenly became a very important point of interest. The question weighing on everybody's mind is, could financial stress have been a motive for murder? But perhaps the most shocking revelation came when investigators examined Michael Peterson's computer. They discovered emails revealing that Michael had been engaging in homosexual affairs and had an extensive collection of gay pornography. This discovery would become a cornerstone of the prosecution's case, suggesting a potential motive for murder being Kathleen had discovered Michael's secret life, leading to a confrontation that ended in her death. Meanwhile, the forensic investigation was in full swing. The North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation, or the SBI, was called in to assist with the analysis of the crime scene. Blood spatter expert Dwayne Deaver, whose testimony would later become a point of major controversy, examined the scene. Dwayne's analysis suggested that the blood spatter patterns were more consistent with a beating than a fall. The medical examiner's report completed that Dr. Deborah Radish classified Kathleen's death as a homicide. The report cited the number and nature of the lacerations on Kathleen's scalp, the lack of skull fractures typically seen in a fall, and other injuries including a fracture to the thyroid cartilage, which the medical examiner could indicate was because of strangulation. On December 20th of 2001, just 11 days after Kathleen's death, Michael Peterson was arrested and was officially charged with first-degree murder. The arrest sent shockwaves through Durham. The Petersons were well known in this community, and the idea that Michael could have murdered Kathleen seemed inconceivable to many who knew them. However, as more details of the case became public, opinion began to divide. In the months leading up to the trial, both the prosecution and defense teams worked tirelessly to build their cases. District Attorney Jim Hardin and Assistant DA Frida Black led the prosecution, while Michael Peterson hired high-profile defense attorney David Rudolph. The trial began on July 1st of 2003 and would last for 3 months, becoming one of the longest trials in North Carolina history. The following will be a breakdown of some of the key elements of the prosecution and defense's cases. The prosecution's case centered around several key points. The first one being the blood evidence. They argued that the amount and pattern of blood at the scene was inconsistent with a fall. Dwayne Deaver testified that the blood splatter indicated Kathleen had been hit at least 4 times with an object. The second one being Kathleen's injuries. The prosecution emphasized the severity and nature of Kathleen's head wounds, arguing they were more consistent with being beaten than by falling. The third one being the missing murder weapon. The prosecution suggested that a blowpoke, a hollow fireplace tool given to the Petersons as a gift, could have been the murder weapon. This blowpoke was conspicuously missing from the Petersons' home. Number 4 being Michael's bisexuality and his affairs. The prosecution painted a picture of a marriage in crisis, suggesting that Kathleen had discovered his affairs with men, leading to a confrontation and resulting in her murder. The fifth key point was the financial motive. They pointed to the Petersons' death and Kathleen's life insurance policy as potential motives for murder. The sixth point was Michael's behavior. The prosecution questioned aspects of Michael's behavior on the night of Kathleen's death, and in the aftermath suggesting it was inconsistent with genuine grief. The defense, being led by David Rudolph, countered with their own narrative. Their key points were the first one being accident theory. They maintained that Kathleen's death was a tragic accident, the result of a fall exacerbated by the alcohol and Valium in her system. The second was blood evidence rebuttal. The defense brought in their own experts who testified that the blood spatter evidence was consistent with a fall and that prosecution's interpretation was flawed. The third is relationship stability. They argued that Michael and Kathleen had a loving relationship and that Kathleen was aware and accepting of Michael's bisexuality. Number 4 was no evidence of a motive. The defense pointed out that there was no history of domestic violence between Michael and Kathleen, and that their financial issues were not severe enough to motivate murder. The fifth key point was a missing weapon. They highlighted that no murder weapon was ever found, and that the prosecution's theory about the blowpoke was speculative at best. One of the most dramatic moments of the trial came when the defense produced the missing blowpoke. It had been found in the Petersons' garage, covered in cobwebs and undamaged, seemingly ruling it out as the murder weapon. The trial was not just a legal proceeding. It became a media sensation. Court TV broadcasted this trial live, and it garnered national attention. The presence of a French documentary crew filming what would become the series The Staircase added another layer of scrutiny to the proceedings. As the trial progressed, an alternative theory began to circulate, one so unusual that it would capture public imagination and add yet another layer of complexity to an already bizarre case. This was the infamous owl theory. The owl theory was not presented at the original trial, but was developed later by attorney T. Lawrence Pollard, who was a neighbor of the Petersons. The theory suggested that Kathleen was attacked outside her home by a barred owl, a species common in North Carolina and known for its aggressive territorial behavior. According to this theory, the owl's talons could have inflicted the lacerations on Kathleen's scalp. Disoriented and bleeding from the attack, Kathleen could have stumbled inside and fell down the stairs, explaining both her head injuries and the fall. While this might sound far-fetched, proponents of this theory point to several pieces of evidence. The first being microscopic owl feathers were allegedly found in a clump of Kathleen's hair that was clutched in her hand. The second is the lacerations on Kathleen's scalp were tri-lobed and consistent with owl talons. The third was drops of Kathleen's blood were found outside of the house on the front walkway. And the fourth was there had been documented owl attacks on humans in this area. The owl theory, while never presented in court, has become a subject of fascination for many following this case. It represents the kind of outlandish, yet not entirely implausible alternative explanation that often emerges in complex criminal cases. After 3 months of testimony, mountains of evidence, and intense media scrutiny, this case went to the jury. On October 10th of 2003, after 14 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with their verdict. Michael Peterson was found guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. This verdict was a crushing blow to Michael and his supporters who had maintained his innocence throughout the entire trial. However, this was far from the end of the story. In the years following his conviction, Michael Peterson's case would take several unexpected turns, keeping it in the public eye and raising questions about the nature of justice and the reliability of forensic evidence. The first major development came in 2011 when it came to light that Dwayne Deaver, the blood splatter analysis who had been a key prosecution witness, had falsely represented his expertise and withheld exculpatory evidence in this and other cases. This revelation sent shockwaves through North Carolina's justice system. Duane Deaver was fired from the SBI, and many convictions that relied on his testimony came under scrutiny. In December of 2011, Judge Orlando Hudson, who had presided over the original trial, vacated Michael Peterson's conviction and granted him a new trial based on the issues with Duane Deaver's testimony. Michael Peterson was released from prison and placed under house arrest while awaiting his new trial. During this time, interest in the case was reignited by the release of the documentary series The Staircase. Originally filmed during the first trial and its aftermath, the series was updated with new episodes covering the latest developments. The documentary provided an intimate look at Peterson, his family, and his defense team, bringing new attention to the case and sparking debates about Michael Peterson's guilt or innocence. As preparations for the new trial were underway, another twist emerged. Prosecutors offered Michael Peterson an Alford plea deal. An Alford plea is a type of guilty plea where the defendant maintains their innocence, but they acknowledge to the court that the prosecution has enough evidence to likely secure a conviction. On February 24th of 2017, just as jury selection for the new trial was about to begin, Michael Peterson accepted the Alford plea to the reduced charge of voluntary manslaughter. He was sentenced to time already served and was freed. This resolution left many questions unanswered. Michael Peterson was technically convicted of causing Kathleen's death, but he maintained his innocence. The plea allowed him to regain his freedom without the risk of another trial, but it also meant that the full truth of what happened that night in 2001 might never be known. As we reflect on Michael Peterson's case, it's clear that it raises numerous important questions about our justice system and the nature of truth itself. Firstly, the case highlights the potential fallibility of forensic evidence. The controversy surrounding Duane Deaver's testimony underscores the need for rigorous standards and oversight in forensic science. How many other cases might have been affected by flawed and misrepresented forensic evidence? Secondly, the case brings into focus the role of sexuality and personal privacy in criminal investigations. The revelation of Michael Peterson's bisexuality and the extramarital affairs played a significant role in the prosecution's case. This raises questions about the extent to which a person's private life should be scrutinized in a criminal trial, and how societal prejudices might influence jurors' perceptions. Thirdly, the Michael Peterson case demonstrates the powerful impact of media on high-profile trials. The presence of documentary filmmakers during the original trial and the subsequent release of the Staircase series undoubtedly shaped public opinion and kept the case in the spotlight for years. This intersection of true crime entertainment and real-world justice is a phenomenon that has only grown more prevalent in recent years. Lastly, the resolution of the case through an Alford plea leaves us in an ambiguous position. It's a stark reminder that the legal concept of guilt and the absolute truth of what occurred don't always align. The justice system is, after all, a human institution subject to the limitations and compromises inherent in any human endeavor. So where does this leave us? And where does it leave Michael Peterson? As of 2024, Michael Peterson now is in his early 80s and is a free man. He's written a book about his experience titled Behind the Staircase and has given interviews maintaining his innocence. Some of his children, particularly Margaret and Martha Ratliff, have stood by him throughout this ordeal. Others, including Kathleen's daughter Caitlin and sister Candace, remain convinced of his guilt and have expressed frustration with the final resolution of this case. The Peterson case has left an indelible mark on the landscape of true crime. It has been the subject of numerous books, documentaries, and even a dramatized HBO Max series. Each new iteration brings fresh eyes to this case, sparking new debates and theories. But amidst all the speculation and media attention, we must not lose sight of the human tragedy at the core of this case. Kathleen Peterson, by all accounts, was a vibrant and loving woman who lost her life on that December night in 2001. Her family and her friends have had to grapple not only with her loss, but with the years of legal battles and public scrutiny that followed. As we conclude this episode, I would like to encourage our listeners to reflect on the complexities we've discussed. The death of Kathleen Peterson and the subsequent legal saga of Michael Peterson serve as a stark reminder that sometimes, even after years of investigation and legal proceedings, absolute certainty can remain elusive. In the realm of true crime, it's easy to get caught up in the drama and the mystery, but cases like this remind us of the very real human costs behind these stories. They challenge us to think critically about our justice system, about the nature of truth, and about the sometimes fine line between guilt and innocence. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Michael Peterson case, and if you're interested in learning more or delving deeper into this case, I highly recommend watching the Staircase documentary series, which provides an in-depth look at the case and its many twists and turns. You might also want to read Michael Peterson's book for his perspective of this case, as well as Written in Blood by Diane Fanning for an alternative view of the case. Alrighty, so it's that time, guys, to say goodbye. But before I do so, I just want to send a thank you to all of my listeners for your continued love and support and for sending in cases that you want covered and stories that you want read on the podcast. We truly accept all stories, including scary, paranormal, and funny. Any cases you want covered or stories that you want read on the podcast, just please send them in to darkcrossroadspodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for hanging out again today, and if you want any more information about the podcast or cases and stories that we cover, then head on over to the website at www.darkcrossroadspodcast.com. There you can find all of the information about the podcast, a link to our merch, and also our blog covering all of the cases that we cover. You can also find us on all social media platforms. Don't forget to like, share, rate, review, subscribe wherever you're listening to us. You can subscribe to the podcast for bonus information. There is a link in all episodes in the notes that will send you to our subscription page, and with that you will get bonus content, discount on future merch, and a lot of extra goodies. Every single dollar that comes through donations or through our subscription goes straight into the podcast, helping fund research, and it really helps us out and keeps this podcast going. And with all of this said, please don't forget to be weird, stay different, and don't trust anyone.